Hi, my name is Reed Silverne. The name of the show is Fed Pride. The reason it's called Fed Pride is because I'm a federal worker, retired, and proud of it. Today for me, it's the 20th of December. For you, it's probably any time in the end of December. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and Happy Holidays. And throughout the most of the month of January. So I do this show about once a month. So you are looking into the past at me talking about even deeper into the past. So, and on top of that, I am my own engineer. I can increase or decrease the volume and so on and so forth. However, I do have to thank the staff of Access Tucson. They do a great job for me. So what am I going to talk about today? I could talk about Christmas and things like that, but I'm not. First, a rundown since my last show. The last show I did was about the APS situation. APS is the Arizona Public Service Company, which is of course a misnomer. APS is a private, a regular company that has a monopoly on all the power generation and the grid in certain parts of Arizona. Fortunately for us, here in Pima County in Tucson, we are not clients of APS, although there might be small areas that are. I do know that Sierra Vista and parts and other parts are under their control, but most of all, and the biggest market of all in Arizona, they control power generation and the grid in Maricopa County, the Phoenix Metro, the Leviathan that kind of strangles the population of Arizona and also includes our state capital. So as I explained before, they had laundered $7 million through a dark money network that ultimately leads up to the Koch brothers and Americans for Prosperity and so on and so forth, and then all the way up through Freedom Partners, which the Koch brothers contribute. Somewhere between the total amount from Freedom Partners into the network is $250 million a year. However, $20 million probably come from the other donors who were required to put up $100,000 each. So the Koch brothers personally and their company, their privately held company, probably puts about $200 million a year, plus another pile of money which gets laundered through what they call the State Policy Network, which is another story for another day. So the result was a guy named Sproul, who controls a little local part of the dark money network, went to Arizona Policy the Arizona Public Service Company, the utility, and said, why don't we take over Arizona Corporations Commission? You really need to get going with your right-wing lobbying. And they threw him out, supposedly. That's what they claim. They didn't, because they hired his lobbyist, his energy lobbyist, out from under him, straight into Arizona Public Service Company, or APS, which I'll call it for the rest of the day, and laundered it through another organization, which is Arizona Voice. I don't have the name of it in front of me, which was also supported by local developers, and basically got rid of the two moderate Republicans and one Democrat out of the Arizona Corporations Commission that controls all utilities, electric lines, the grid, energy, and providing energy and lines to new developments. So a lot of real estate involvement there, and bought basically two Tea Party guys and a guy who's almost a Tea Party guy, who replaced the moderates in the Arizona Corporations Commission, and they proceeded and then proceeded to have a secretly funded from Project 60 Plus started putting ads on saying that people with solar energy on their roofs are cheating the rest of us because we have to pay more because they buy less electricity. Oh, that's free enterprise. And of course, this whole idea is funneled through the Goldwater Institute, which is part of a state policy network that have issued studies and so on and so forth that solar energy is going to cost everybody else more. Well, of course, just step back and think about it. First of all, it's supposed to be free enterprise, and the smallest small businessman is the guy who puts energy on his roof and then sells it to the grid. But the whole thing is so ridiculous because we could charge people with bicycles a tax because they're using roads that are supported with a gas tax. I mean, how dare they make roads more expensive for the rest of us? Same thing with people with electric cars. And the whole thing is just so bizarre that now free enterprise is defined as charging people who don't use a product a tax for not using the product. Oh, it's just insane. So there was a big thing. They tried to push $100 a month tax, $1,200 a year on everybody who had solar on their roof to pay APS, this fee. And finally, 3 to 5, it passed that everybody with solar on their roof would pay $5 a month, $60 a year, because they don't use a product provided by a company enough, and therefore shift cost shifting. Of course, the cost shifting idea is completely ridiculous because if enough people have solar on their roof, then they don't have to invest in a new power plant. So the whole thing is just bizarre. I mean, bizarre to the end of bizarreness. And for somebody who actually had been a Republican, I'm still technically a Republican, this whole redefinition of free enterprise, which means the little guy has to pay a monopolist not to use his product. The whole thing is just Orwellian. It's black is white, freedom is slavery, peace is war, and so on and so forth. It's just insane. And of course, that can go all the way. People who use satellite TV should pay the cable companies. The cable companies, people who use the cable companies should pay broadcast television. People who use broadcast television should pay silent movie producers. I mean, the whole thing is just crazy. Every industry gets replaced with a newer product. People who use the newer product shouldn't have to pay the old product people for not using their product. People should be allowed to go to innovation and to improve things and to improve their own lives. And this is, so where does this idea come from? That just because we don't use your product, we have to pay a monopoly, not even a regular company. It's not even a matter of paying GM for using bicycles. It's a matter of paying a monopoly, a poorly managed monopoly. And nobody can say the electric company in Maricopa County is worth anything. It's one of the worst companies with terrible service. And I shouldn't say that as a general thing. I will only say that I don't know they have terrible service, but everybody I've talked to that uses their service says their service is terrible. So if you want to go after me, just take into account that caveat. You could have great service, Arizona Public Service Company. I don't know that you do because the people I've talked with you that are your customers say your service is awful. All right. So I've ranted about that enough. And but the bottom line is that there is a network. And it's a kind of a bizarre thing. It sounds like something out of a conspiracy movie or a science fiction movie. But since the 1990s, even all the way back to the 80s, they have been building a network of nonprofits and think tanks, giving money to universities like George Mason University to fund professors that agree with their positions, and all these positions are sent out simultaneously, so that when you get on Fox News or you listen to Mark Levin or whoever, the radio talk show hosts, they quote so-and-so from the Goldwater Institute, so-and-so from the Mackinac Institute, so-and-so from the Heritage Foundation, so-and-so from Americans for Prosperity. So there's all these different organizations that all completely agree with everything the other organizations say. So how is this possible? And of course it's possible because they are all the same organization, and they all have the same source of funding. And the same source of funding is Freedom Partners, and Freedom Partners is a 5036 organization, which means it's technically the equivalent of the American Petroleum Institute or the American Medical Association. It's a group of like-minded professionals. Of course it isn't. It's a political group. And its purpose, it has, I believe, 200 donors who have to put up $100,000 each. That's $20 million a year for the privilege of being members. And then the Koch brothers are in charge of it. In fact, one of the Koch brothers executives is the head of Freedom Partners. And they distribute money through an entire network, millions and millions of dollars, over $100 million to CPPS, something private patients. I don't have the name of that in front of me either. Americans Prosperities gets in the tens of millions of dollars. And they fund the Tea Party Express and Tea Party Patriots and other organizations. So all these things go through. There's hundreds of them. They also have a chunk of money that goes through what they call the State Policy Network, SPN. SPN goes back to 1992. Their founding investment or founding grant is from a guy named Thomas Rowe, who's a billionaire who made his money in construction products or construction materials. And he and a couple other people founded this organization that basically takes the Heritage Foundation and founds a Heritage Foundation in every state. So there's 64 small think tanks. All the think tanks get their messaging from the central organization. They all push for the same agenda, which is set once a year, and yet they all seem like they're different organizations and groups, so that you get so-and-so from this one, so-and-so from the Mackinac, so-and-so from the Goldwater Institute, and so on and so forth, getting on television, all with the same message. And you think, well, this is what people think. This is what the professors and the smart people really believe. However, it's not. It's one organization. And that's funded through a number of millionaires, mostly, again, by the Koch brothers or Koch brother-backed organizations. And they shift money backwards and forwards, and so on and so forth. And it's kind of weird the way this works. So actually, that set of organizations were the groups that laundered APS money, which APS is not supposed to push a candidate for the Arizona Corporations Commission that oversees their activities, and to invest in them. And as a matter of fact, another part of the network is ALEC, the American Legislation Exchange. Oh, God. I'm going up again. Commission, I believe. I'm going to have to go and check what ALEC is, but ALEC is everywhere, and they're definitely within our own legislature. So some of the people that are members of ALEC within our own legislature are, and I have a list of them here somewhere. Let me check to see. Brewer, our own governor. Andy Biggs, the Republican Majority Leader of the state Senate. Kirk Adams, who ran for Congress. John Kavanaugh, the kind of guy who looks like Wilfred Grimsley, and of course I do too, who went on television during SB 1070 and said, while SB 1070 isn't aimed at Hispanics, we don't have to worry about illegal aliens from Sweden. He's a member. A whole bunch of House of Representatives and Arizona senators, including Steve Smith, Chad Vogt, Yarborough, are all members of ALEC. And so what has ALEC done for us lately? Well, among other things, SB 1070 is one of theirs. Stand Your Ground law is one of theirs. Basically, they have been writing the laws for the legislature for years. And what they do is they have basic laws that are called they're written by ALEC and then distributed to their members throughout the entire United States to model laws, model bills for the various things that they're for. And among the model bills that have been coming out are what they call voter suppression, but it's really voter ID laws that have passed in Michigan, Ohio, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Arizona, and other places. And they've extended those and done some think tanking about them to reduce early voting, because a lot of minorities early vote, get rid of early voting, especially on Sunday, because minority churches were getting together and having early voting parties. To try to stop that. One of the big ones is to try to make people prove that they're citizens in order to even register to vote up front. In other words, they either have to have a driver's license from a state that requires proof of citizenship, or they have to have a current military ID, or they have to have a current passport. However, if your passport lapses, even though you had to be a citizen to get your passport, you can't prove you're a citizen. All of a sudden, you're not a citizen anymore. If your Arizona driver's license lapses, you can't take the Arizona driver's license that you proved you were a citizen in order to present it in the past, in order to get it in the past. That's no longer good. So you have to reprove that you're a citizen, and the only way you can reprove you're a citizen is actually get a certified copy of your birth certificate. Many people don't have it. Rural people don't have it. Some minorities don't have it, and there you are. So you can, and if you are a member of the military and you leave the military, all of a sudden you have to prove you're a citizen again, even though your military CAC card said U.S. citizen on it. You can't present that, or even make a copy of it and send it. So basically, that went all the way to the Supreme Court. And our Secretary of State is named Ken Bennett, and he's running for governor. He's going to replace Brewer. There's no reason why he shouldn't, because he's the biggest Republican. And he's gone ahead and said a Supreme Court case was actually issued by the Secretary of State, not of Arizona, but of Kansas. And that guy is named Korbach. And he is the guy that pushed us to pass SB 1070 a few years ago when he was one of the chiefs of ALEC. Now he's Secretary of State of Kansas. So he went to the Supreme Court and added Arizona as a complainant and said, this is ridiculous. Our state law says you have to prove you're a citizen before you can register to vote, and yet there's a federal law, which is motor voter, that says all you have to do is provide an affidavit that you're a citizen. Well, you have to provide proof of citizenship when you vote. Now they want to have people do it over and over and over again. So where did that come from? Well, it's the same. Oh, well, first of all, the Supreme Court said no. But the Supreme Court said, one of the Supreme Court justices, I believe Scalia, said, I am voting against your position that the federal law implies what your state law implies, that you need to prove you're a citizen just to register on motor voter. Doesn't need to be added to the federal form for voter registration. However, you can have two-tier voting. You can require it for voting for state offices, but not for requiring it for federal offices. So this is what Bennett says that he's going to do. So he's going to institute a system where they issue more than one ballot for everybody in Arizona, and they have an entire group of people that review registrations to see whether a certified birth certificate adequate to them is included. And if it's not, they'll throw the registration out the window and that person can't vote. Well, clearly this whole thing is designed to make it harder and harder to vote. And what is it? Oh, that's right. It's a model bill that was pushed by ALEC through state policy think tanks that all got their marching orders from the State Policy Network, all of which is funded by Freedom Partners, which the Koch brothers put $200 million a year in. Koch brothers, by the way, own Koch Industries, and you may know that. Or you're probably buying their products because they make Charmin toilet tissue. And of course, that's what I think about their organization, is that they're probably worth not much more than what you throw in your toilet. But there it is. So the taxpayer has got to pay extra money to keep people from voting for state offices. And that's the way it has to be, because we have to prove that we're an American citizen. Of course, the requirements for the proof that we're American citizen, people, and most people, especially seniors, have achieved over and over and over again. Their lapsed military ID that says U.S. citizen on it. Their passport, which they're no longer using, that says that you had to prove that you were a citizen to have. Your Arizona driver's license that might be lapsed. So it's definitely an impediment for seniors, but seniors are takers. They're not makers. They're retired. They take Social Security. They're taking money from billionaires who have higher taxes, who are just paying all these bums who've actually served our country who saved us during World War II. How dare they be takers? How dare we let them vote? The minute their Arizona driver's license lapses, they're not citizens anymore. They got to prove over and over and over again that they're really citizens in order to vote in our state. It's ridiculous. Thank you very much.